years ago, parts of North America erupted into battle. Soldiers from here and around the British Empire successfully defended Canada from American invasion. And the government says it was a decisive moment in Canadian history. There have been more than 1,000 days of ceremonies planned to mark the bicentennial of the War of 1812. Governor General David Johnston attending the ceremonies today, and he joins us right now from Niagara-on-the-Lake, Ontario. So, David Johnston, certainly always interesting to see history brought to life, and I see someone right behind you in period costume. What have you been taking in so far today?
Well, this is an extraordinary celebration of a most important part of our history, Nancy. We've had peace for 200 years. It was 200 years ago we fought the last battle on Canadian soil, and that's probably the reason we don't think a lot about the War of 1812, because we've so much enjoyed peace. But it was that war, of course, that brought about the conditions for Canada to become a country in 1867, and we've had the great benefit of peace and freedom from the end of that war almost 200 years ago.
Yeah, I know in your opening remarks you were talking about why this is a defining moment in Canada's history, even though Canada wasn't a country yet back then. You also talked about, in many ways, you connected the dots by saying that a coalition of forces and groups came together to fight alongside the British, and that in many ways that captured and foreshadowed the kind of diversity that Canada celebrates. Tell me more about how you connect those two parts of Canadian history.
Well, I think you've expressed that theme very well, Nancy. From diversity came a very important unity and a collaboration, really a four-part. The British soldiers who were stationed here, that we had to fight for that, and that those precious parts of our nation, freedom, liberty, democracy, we should never be complacent about it, and we should work constantly to improve and enhance.
Actually, very, very interesting. We'll let you get back. I know you have a busy day doing a number of activities to commemorate this event in Canadian history. We'll let you get back to it, but Your Excellency, really appreciate your time. Thanks so much for joining us.
Nice to be with you, Nancy. Take care.
You too.
French-Canadian settlers who fought very valiantly, of course, in Lower Canada. Thirdly, the settlers here in Upper Canada who were defending their homes and their farms. And finally, and very important, was the First Nations people who really made the difference in defending our borders from the Americans. Had all those forces not come together, we would not be Canada. But because they did, we formed the basis for a nation.
So you're right. The story of First Nations and the role they played as being very effective allies and soldiers during this effort, because they were very good at repelling the Americans at some very key points, is part of all of these commemorative activities to make sure that that part of Canadian history, that part of Canada's role in this war is told, and that people fully appreciate that.
I think so. I think it's to bring that history alive. It's very vivid. And you're right, the role of the First Nations people was crucial, both in the battle here at Queenston Heights and the earlier battle when we conquered Detroit early in the war. There was a great fear of the First Nations people. They were scary warriors, and that fear factor was very prominent in our successes. And of course, it's a matter that we should celebrate as we recognize that the First Nations people were crucial to Canada becoming a country.
You know, I'm sure you've discovered this as well in conversation with people. I mean, lots of people are still surprised that we actually were at war with the U.S.
Right.
And that we certainly had our share of triumphs. What would you like Canadians to know most about the War of 1812?
Well, I think it's important that we not be complacent with respect to our freedoms, the peace, the liberty that we enjoy. This is a very blessed country, and because we've enjoyed peace so long, and because our freedoms seem to be so readily available, I think we have a tendency sometimes to take that for granted. The War of 1812 reminds us